But anyways, we have to order our food so we can get on to our topic with Matt today about education or some such flimmy-flammy stuff. But I saw in Carl's special list today, which is excellent, especially here for the executive suite because it really belongs in this kind of setting, is that he has the Mad Monkey, and therefore the Mad Monkey meat. And the Mad Monkey meat, guys, in case you haven't heard of this, and it is the real deal because I've talked to some Marines, and apparently Carl has too, because now he has them here for us to eat, is you tap the skull of a monkey, and they're still alive. And
you numb it.
You numb it, exactly, and you eat until the monkey dies, and whoever causes the monkey to die pays for the meal. And since it's a mad monkey, I mean, it has kind of like mad cow's disease. So this is very risky stuff. But I'm up for it.
I'm in.
You guys in?
I was going to have, yes. Yeah, I was going to have since the Doberman pincher burger was so good, I was going to have those chili dogs, provided they were real hot dogs.
I mean, like Dachshunds?
Dachshunds. Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good backup.
But I'll have the Mad Monkey.
Well, maybe you can have the Dachshunds for an appetizer. They are after.
Just one then,
They're
Carl.
pretty small.
I had a ground dog on the way here. I think I could probably...
Roadkill?
I brought it in.
Roadkill?
That's his
I've done that.
All right, then I'll go with the gym sock soup.
Gym sock soup?
For education.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just have water again after all that.
Mike, you're not adventurous with your meals.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, we have Matt Montgomery for alliteration on our education show here, he felt compelled, actually. It wasn't more a want. He just actually felt that he needed to get this out on the public airwaves to talk about American education specifically. Correct?
Yeah, I would say we'll say American education. We'll cross those topics and also just look at education in general.
And we'll have to first, of course, go through that burdensome process of actually trying to figure out what education is,
what
it means. But I think I'm up for that boring part in the beginning, and then we can get into...
We'll make it interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find that way. So does that sound okay to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we'll talk about?
I think that's a great lunch.
Because I think that'll help digest my monkey meat. It's talking about
I'm not
education.
sure anyone will digest that.
Okay, brain food. Well, why don't you start it off, Matt? Oh, by the way, nothing starts a meal better than beer to talk about education, does it?
Right.
Especially if it's a government education in high school.
You have to kill those brain cells that are competing for the education.
But this makes me feel like I'm back in high school.
Grade school for me it was.
Well,
now, the way
you
that
guys did excel.
The way I thought about approaching it again was that I don't know anything about it, and we'll just go ahead and try and explore. I think it's the best way to do it. And so what made me think about this topic originally was just casual reading. I was reading books, and then it just happened that after like 3 or 4 books, I came across this theme of education in America. And one of these books was Closing of the American Mind. I forget who wrote it, but anyway, it talks about a lot about it was the first time that I had heard that education was even criticized, and I guess if you think about it, in a way for me it's just waking up, and I'm always waking up to new topics and ideas, and the point is just to point out education. How's our education? What is education? And it started making me thinking about my own education, and then some of the things that these people were saying about education, I lived out and I proved. So it's almost scary, and then it started making me think a little bit more globally in the sense that, one idea that we can start with is that education in America has become so specialized. Like I'm a plastics engineer, and I went there for plastics engineering, and along my way they tried to sprinkle on that education a few tidbits of liberal arts.
Well, it obviously worked. Well, maybe not so. Maybe
not
you're
so.
just inherently that way.
And so now I'm thinking it should have been the other way around. I should have spent 4 years in school studying liberal arts and then spent 2 years on my
I'll challenge you further. Do you think you need to go to school for 4 years to study liberal arts? Some of the brightest guys I know pick up stuff just as you did, reading books. You don't need to go to a school.
That's a good point, and we can talk about that because if you consider about going back to school, is it worth like making the decision? Do I need to go and get some certificate saying that I have studied philosophy or this, or can I just say on my resume that I've read all these collection of books? So where does credibility come in that? So anyway, going back to the idea...
Pieces of paper. We're pandering in pieces of
right.
paper.
Well, this is the test right here today.
That's right.
I think dialogue is where it's at, whether it's written or
And people
verbal.
can judge for themselves whether or not you got an education along the way.
Or whether you, or more importantly, whether you're saying something that's an idea worthy of contemplation or not. So have at it. Throw out those big ideas.
Well, I'll throw it back at you. Do you think that education, or the whole group, is too specialized? I mean, are we lacking a liberal education, or what is liberal education? And the way, I'll just tell you the idea that makes me think this. I'm thinking that civilization is just getting very large, and it's one big machine in the sense that to get these goods and services out, to get these plastic caps out there, I don't need someone who knows about Plato to make this. I need someone that knows how to draw on a board, and then I need him to hand it off or her to hand it off to someone who can make a mold for it. And so as long as I can study how to make that mold or how to do this and that,
you're a complete man.
That's right. Then I'm a component. I'm justified to be that component, and I can make mega bucks as opposed to someone else who really does have an education that really does contribute to society as a whole and really challenges people. You know what I mean? So, going back, do you think that education...
Well, I guess I could challenge you, not that I want to, but I'm going to have to when you say contribute to society as a whole, because I got a big problem every time you bring up that society thing, because it gives me those Marxist chills. This guy's contributing to... I mean, talk about contributing to society. Imagine how many people actually use this little plastic top. Obviously, they're buying it, so they think there's some value there in a monetary way. Whereas you got Ted Kaczynski off in the woods in Montana, who probably had a lot of very liberal education type thoughts. You know, how much was he contributing to your society? Now, personally, I'm okay with a guy spending the rest of his life in the woods doing whatever the hell he wants. I had a problem with his little mailing problems, but aside from that, you know, it was okay for him to be in Montana, because personally, I understand that Montana thing. It's a great state. I would love to live there, but you know, if you're going to measure it by this societal thing, people making plastic tops have a lot of interaction that way.
Well, I guess also let's question the ends then. Does Ted Kaczynski stop when the bomb explodes, or does it stop when there's books written about him and there's laws and it re-educated law enforcement and taught them new practices and did this and that, you know, in a way that kind of turns around and does benefit society? Or it may cause people...
Or not. And maybe it further imprisons us.
True. But I think that might be a little bit more into the group of what you want out of society. And it's not really education.
You know what I want? Leave me the F alone. Right. That's what I want out of society. I just want
the monkey head.
You just want the monkey head? I want the mad monkey meat too, but we'll have to wait, Matt.
Right.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, society is just this construct. I mean, it's a word that says, you know, it infers or assumes that there's this collective will, collective good, and all that. To me, you know, I used to believe that fairy tale when I was as part of my inculcation during college, but fortunately, I snapped out of that educational environment and started thinking more on my own and being challenged by other people who weren't of that mindset. And, you know, ultimately, I've come down to the fact that I'm in as good a position of anyone to figure out what it is I want out of life. And in fact, you know, if I'm guided by what I think other people want, or this construct of society, I mean, I think that gets you nowhere. I think you got to focus on what it is that you want for yourself and how you can make yourself as good as you can. So let's start from that premise. And then, you know, the whole education thing then becomes murky at that juncture, because I'm saying, hey, if it's for self-improvement, I don't need to go to someone. I can choose to if I think that person's going to help me, but to go for 4 years to get a piece of paper that says I was either liberally or technically educated for 4 years, to me it's I mean, I basically consider college at this juncture of my life to be more of a summer camp for 4 years. Because the people that are out there doing it, I mean, look at all the prime examples, whether technical or not. You've got guys like Bill Gates, I mean, he was there for what, a semester or two at Harvard, and said, "This is bull," and he just went out there and did it, and he built what he built.
Yeah, but look at this too. Bill Gates isn't Bill Gates just because he's Bill Gates. He's Bill Gates because he had people that were educated underneath him and did things like that.
If you turn back the clock before Microsoft was anything, Bill Gates was still a smart guy who did some pretty nifty things with while he wrote the basic interpreter. So even if he hadn't become a multi-billionaire, he'd have still been
Bill Gates,
an admirable guy from some aspect.
Technical perspective at a minimum. And then if you think about what he's done to get where he is now, I mean, it went way beyond the technical realm to strategy. I mean, that guy is going to be, and I don't think he walked into it because he keeps doing it over and over and over again. That guy is probably the best business strategist, at least in the U.S., if not in the world, based on his track record. And he didn't learn that in school. And a lot of the guys that work...
He learned it at home.
Yeah, well, probably. And
the competitive sort of,
You know more about his life story than anyone
but
at this
it's
table.
tricky too. I mean, we're talking, see, you bring it down to an individual level.
Because I think that's what education is.
But see, it's almost random chance, like to say what is an individual. I mean, you can't, I guess where it's tricky is when you try to apply what a larger group in society, as you don't like, to adhere to, or those principles. But in a way, they kind of have to look at people as commodities and say, look, I have to look at them as all the same, and I have to give them all this standard as far as education, this and that.
Why?
Well, I'm not. Why? That's the way it is. That's reality.
Well, that's what it is, but I'm asking why.
I think that's just. I don't know why it's like that, and that's what I'm questioning. And so I'm wondering, what is the best way of an education?
I think the reason people get viewed this way is because we're largely cogs in
the machine head,
a government mindset sort of machine. I'm not just saying because I think corporations to some extent are extensions.
There are many
government
many
mentality.
governments.
And I mean, to me, education comes down to a simple word. You used the word before. You talk about thinking. If the only thing a child ever learned as a result of an educational experience was how to think effectively, how to solve problems, they weren't able to regurgitate. One of my favorite quotes from Einstein is, "Never bothered to remember anything I could look up." As long as you know how to solve a problem, that's the only thing that at least somebody coming out of high school really needs to know. They'll learn a lot of other useful things along the way. And it used to be, at least with classical education, that you learned a lot of things like Latin or mathematics and things like that, but they were means to an end to teach you how to think, so that you were a thinking individual.
I'm not sure where the Latin came in on that.
Well, I mean, it was a matter of mental discipline and things.
Right.
It was just a tool, whether it be Greek or languages like that. But and when we talked the show with Jerry about people can't balance their checkbooks. Basically, this is a hard thing to say, but an awful lot of people simply can't think. And even if somebody didn't know how to balance a checkbook, but they came with certain basic thinking skills, they could figure that out almost on their own pretty quick.
Yeah.
They had certain basic mathematics that they had to learn along the way, and
right.
So I think that's where schools fall down. Now, a liberal education used to be basically. You would learn a whole lot about, literature and philosophy and science, such that you were a well-rounded person and could understand the world around you and your internal world.
You get a sense of culture.
Extent. Yes, and became a responsible member of your society, responsible to yourself, and to the people around you. And now, liberal education is everything but that. It's all sorts of feel-good, politically correct sort of.
And don't question anything.
Right,
I mean,
right.
at least the PC stuff, you never question that.
And
God
there's a
forbid.
role for technical education, but realizing that that's what it is. You need to know how to manufacture a certain sort of thing, so you need to be a certain kind of engineer. Just like I go take a computer course for some things in the computer area that I need to know quickly and apply them. But that's all it is.
Right. It's an application.
Yeah.
And I think, personally, I think the way it's constructed in the U.S. right now is, for a lot of the schools, there are actually some schools like, was it Northeastern, where they go to school half the time, work half the time. Because then that interface is like, okay, I need to know this, I'll learn this. I learn it, I use it. I learn it, I use it. I learn it, I use it. On the technical side, because why else would you want to know technical stuff unless you're going to use it?
Well, the bottom line in American education is that, number one, the goal of education in America isn't to teach kids how to think. It's to teach kids how to acculturate, how to become part of the larger group, how to fit in.
How to get along, how to tolerate.
Right. If you read the
How to fill out a tax form.
The early educators, they were very
tax.
explicit about what they wanted from government-based education systems. They wanted to take people like those, those rude Irish Catholic
Italians
and Italians and all the rest, right? And all these groups and melt them into this
How do you
American
deal with you
system and
Polacks?
indoctrinate
I know
them.
they weren't very good with us Irish folks, but
Yeah, just the same. Just
Yeah.
throw us
But
into schools and
so the school
say, learn the
system is
language.
essentially an indoctrination system, and that's borrowed. We did that education show with Todd Platts, just borrowed from the Germans, which is they were great at indoctrination.
Yeah.
What do you think about now looking
and
at
extermination, but that's another
Well, later on,
issue.
educational models? And what about the model where you have, and I know it's basic, but you have this tribe down in South America, and it can happen at any time, but most likely
Happen in any tribe.
in any tribe, no specific tribe.
in your tribe and my tribe.
But where you have, and this is where I think there's a nice aspect to this model where you have a father teaching a son something and a skill, and then
they
you
call
have
that homeschooling.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at this too. Then, so then you have this child who's learning, but he's older than his younger brother.
Yep.
His younger brother is faintly grasping these concepts, and not enough to really know what's going on. But so you think of it like on a scale, and you have the father teaching the son who's ready to learn it, and then you have the son who later in the evening is talking to his little brother, and his little brother wants to know what's going on, and hey, show me this, show me that. So in the same day, he's then asked to teach, and he's then getting that perspective of like, okay, am I really learning this? And this is what you have to do, and this is what I'm teaching you. And so you have this really intimate relationship, this string of like a father, mid-son, and a youngest son, where it goes back and forth. And so you have the son in the middle who's not only teaching, but he's also learning, and then occasionally has an interaction with grandpa by the fireside. by the fireside. And
This
then
is an extended family.
by the pyre. But then you have, see now, compare that now
Where they
to
have great grandpa, right?
this model now where you replace the father with one teacher. And now you replace this middle kid with 20 kids, and you cut off the younger kid, so the younger kid is no longer there, and then you just have these kids that are basically listening, and just saying, here's what it is, and they sit there, and their only regurgitation is to put it down on paper when it's time.
It's very much faith-based for one. There's no like, okay, is this thing really real or not? That's the whole thing that I found after some contemplation to be kind of silly, was that there's all this emphasis placed on science, but in at least many educational systems, they don't have to be just government schools either. All they do is present all this stuff to you, and you take it on faith. You don't know. I mean, there's no experimentation to verify, can I repeat this or not? It's just, here's this wealth of information that you must believe to be true. But I think the element you're talking about, I mean, everything is getting separated, compartmentalized into basically age groups. And that is almost
an hour of this subject,
right.
An hour of that.
And it's to me, it's, I don't know if that one came out of the other or not, but I suspect they did. Is that was kind of how production went. You went to specialization, and so there's like, hey, here's this great model that obviously worked to make cars and that sort of thing. Let's do it to education. And I think personally, I think you lose a lot there. I mean, going to school like that, I'm really questioning if that's the way to go or not. And I do think that more family-based education is much more effective. And if you look at specific ethnic groups within the U.S., the ones that seem to do very well over and over again are the ones that have very tight families, who have very tight families in the U.S., largely Asian and Jewish. They have the tightest families. They do a lot of education at home is where it belongs.
National Spelling Bee contests, they just like
Home education guy.
Top 3 people were homeschooled.
Yeah, the one that won was from Maine.
Homeschooled.
Well, that says a lot. I mean,
That
to
says a
Crawford's
lot.
point, you know, and you know, if you know any Jewish families and you have the pleasure of them, they do quite a bit of not only home but community education within that community. You know, when you go to a Jewish synagogue, those kids are learning how to become adults. They're learning the lessons of life at home. You know, they learn managing money and the virtues of telling the truth and being honest and responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's
Well,
that's what's no longer
in a traditional school. I mean, and I say this and I think this all the time. I think, aside from what's ostensibly going on there about presenting this material to your kids and they can regurgitate it later on a test, what else is going on there socially, I think, is incredibly damaging, which is basically you get to play out the worst elements of the human condition, and basically the Lord of the Flies captured it perfectly, and it happens in schools every day. You have the dominant kids picking on the weaker kids, and it happens in schools, it happens in camps. And it's just like I just think, one, it's incredibly damaging. It's so unhealthy, and it's just ugly. And I saw that when I was growing up in school. I mean, and I was part of it. I'm not saying I wasn't a part of it.
You're bullying them?
I was on both sides of it.
Taking the milk money?
I didn't do the milk money, but I was on both sides of the fight. I was either the one that was instigating, or I was the one getting the crap beat out of me. And that's just the way it was.
Oh, it's good you weren't constipated.
It is, but it was, you know, in hindsight and reflecting on it, it was just this ugly environment.
Okay, well, so let's back up a little bit here then. I mean, we're talking about the way people should be educated, right? We're talking about American education. So
What's missing?
what's missing? My question here was going to be, what should we be educating? How should we be doing it? What should our kids be learning?
Yeah, you made a comment earlier, and it's something that I've come to realize a little bit too, in a sense that, like, I went to school, and a lot of the jobs that I've held out of school, I really didn't even need the education in. And so obviously I was brought to a certain point. Mm-hmm. But it seems what I needed most was just the interpersonal skills, and really just a way to, I mean, as long as you're a thinking individual and you can interact with people and you can sense change and handle change. And I think, like, I know it's a totally different end of things, but like Dale Carnegie classes, they deal with this thing. There's a whole bunch of like negotiating skills and things like that, and you question, like, those things are really valuable skills, and why aren't those being taught in school?
Right. You had asked the question, is American education too specialized? And I'm not really sure I know the answer to that, Matt, but I would say that that may not necessarily be a bad thing, because you need, I mean, especially in today's society, you know, when I talk to young kids that I see on the streets that are being punks, you know, they look like Crawford Lyons this high, you know, they're just punks.
They don't got near the moves
And
I
I
have.
get what
I went to the school of hard knocks.
I try to give them my
Well, they're little
Benef-
kids, they don't have goatees.
I try to give them the wisdom of my experience, and I try to tell them that you need to be something technical. If you don't have any kind of skill, whatever that skill may be, I don't care if you can fix automobiles, heaters, air conditioners, widgets, whatever it is, if you can do taxes or be a lawyer, whatever skill you have, or be a plastics engineer, you have to have a skill, or you're at the mercy of this society or the economy. You're going to be no different than anybody else. You have to differentiate yourself. So, is it necessarily bad? Are we specialized? You know, maybe we are. I really can't answer that, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing. But if you back up a little more and ask the better question, which is, what should we be teaching our kids, and how should we be teaching it? I mean, what should American education be about? And to Mike's point, we need to learn the basic skills of how to listen, how to think, how to problem solve, those kind of things. I mean, once you have that, you know, and I even take it even basic. I tell my kids, and this is what I talk with my wife, and this is what I'd like. I want our kids to know mathematics, and I want them to know English, primarily. Then from there, once they can read and write and figure things out, then you know, they're going to be able to learn whatever it is their heart desires for them to do. But until they learn that, then they're at the mercy of the economy, society, you know, whatever it is. I mean,
They're always at the mercy of that, though. Economically, you're always at the mercy of what's going on out there.
but
Well,
Crawford,
some more
Than others.
and less
Right.
than others.
Correct.
right. What I'm saying there,
It's a
Crawford,
function of
is
how-
Bill Gates was not
you are.
was at the mercy of society or the economy as well as I am. But he's doing better because obviously he's a more educated, more intelligent person than I am. You know, so to the extent, and you have to admit, someone that can't read and write, they're really at a disadvantage to someone that can read and write.
On average.
Right, on average.
See, I think it's more important, and I think this is where the liberal education comes in. I think you need to hit them early because I think that you really need, as that mind is forming, and if you're just like teaching the basics, mathematics, this and that, up until a certain point, and then you say, hey, look, here's college, go be liberal, go get this education.
You're right. That's
And then
too
like
late.
so like then the point is, and I think this is a problem with America today, and that people just there's a lot of dysfunctions, and like there's simple ones. People have trouble communicating, and why? I mean, look, why we need all these tapes on negotiation and this and that, because if there's going to be this huge amount of skill in that area, it's probably an indication that there's a lack of it within the people. And so I think that we don't really produce well-rounded people. We might produce something that's going to serve society as far as the economics go, but I don't think we're going to serve, like, I can't come home to my wife or partner, this or that, and then like they want to know how it's going, and I'm like, hey, widget. You know what I mean? And like I can't be thinking like that. I really need to, as a person, to be drawing in. You know, I need to tell this person however I'm feeling. I need to be able to communicate. I need to tell them that what's special about them, this and that. Which I'm not saying you can't do as an individual, but when I'm
So you need to speak in the language of love. I shall teach you this.
well, if my partner's a cat, I don't know about that. But come here, kitty.
It's all in how you say,
But
come here, kitty.
But the same thing, if it's not about my skill, as I said, because you can just be a thinking person, you just need the skills of interacting with people, then it, of course...
But just go out and do it. Just go out and
just
interact.
go out and do it. But I mean, there's obviously, you can't just go out and interact, and when people start...
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
No, I think you can
Well,
go
if
out and
you're a social
interact.
misfit, it's, you know...
Well, that's
See,
something
but
different.
you're like an extrovert, so it's easy for people like you. But what about
I can
people
go
that...
either way, baby. I can live in the woods.
What about people that just aren't inclined that way, and they need to... But what they need... One way that I'm going to interface with you is if we have common grounds, and if I can like latch on to things and topics that are relevant, you know, to both of us. And if I'm just talking, like I said, widget, and you're like gidget,
Okay,
gidget,
I'm
gidget.
only talking widget to that guy.
But I mean, we take on all these different roles. But
Sure.
I think to be that person who is a Bill Gates, and I think to rise to that level where you are making those decisions and where you're truly interacting with people and doing it in a productive sense, I think you need the liberal education. You need those resources there.
But see, I guess to me, a liberal education, some of the what I would consider to be the most. I mean, liberal education means you're well-rounded. Well-rounded means you're a Renaissance person. The examples that immediately come to mind for me are people who either did or didn't go to college, but it had nothing to do with college. It had everything to do with what they did after college. It was whether they were interested in things or not. I think actually going to colleges can have a very numbing effect on an individual because they're forced to do this or they're forced to do that.
Now
and
you're
get the
talking
grade thing and all
American
that.
individual.
Yeah, I'm talking American. I'm not saying that it can't be different elsewhere, but I just don't think, I mean, college I think could still or should still exist in some form, but it's very much, okay, if I want to learn about X, Y, Z, either for business or because I want to learn about it, but I'm just interested in it, and this individual can help me, then I'll go to that person, or I'll go to this institution that happens to employ that person. But to me, it's this whole idea of going off for 4 years and partying and what have you.
Okay, here, it's coming a little bit closer to me, but in a sense, like, there's an idealistic sense, and I think it'd be great if I could go out and learn and read books and really, when I go to that interview, and show them that I'm a thinking person, this and that they can get that feel from me. But the same thing goes that we don't exist in that society, and that's the whole point of this discussion. We're questioning where is our society, and I think our society is very, as it might become, or as I question, is it too compartmentalized? that the way that we react as a society is like, I got resume. I'm only taking people that meet these qualifications.
Yeah, that does happen.
Who has time to listen to some guy speaking about this and that? And he might be the better person, but look, I need someone with this and that.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, and so that's where the question is, you know.
Well, but you're relating to the fact that the job is everything.
The reason, yeah.
And you know, Richard's right. You have to have a lot of skill. You have to bring a lot of skills to the table in most jobs. And being a well-rounded, liberally educated person has, you know, maybe some impact on some of that, but is basically secondary toward being able to, you know, design manufacturing processes or, you know, hire people real great, you know, whatever. And there's another part of life that, you know, as you pointed out, you go home and, you know, you leave the job behind, really, and it's the other things in life that you know, it's being a good citizen, as in being a responsible citizen, not voting to you know, understanding what your society should be about, and not, you know, taking on the government line because you're a thinking person who is an independent person.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of it. You know, the work part of it, we need the specialized skills, especially in the kind of society we have today, you know, with a level of technology. But there's much more to, you know, a good life than, I mean, pretty much the Greeks had it summed up 2,000 years ago. We haven't really improved upon it.
Which is what?
I don't know if I can remember the quote.
I'll get it.
Well,
a proxy to the quote.
That a good life consisted of, I will never remember this. But basically,
wine, babes, what else?
And dinner at the Central Family Restaurant.
And dinner at Central Family Restaurant.
No, but an examined life
is not worth
along
living.
lines of excellence and you know, I can't.
That's what it's the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yes.
Right.
So,
Right.
But you put a sordid twist on that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a slip.
A slip, a Freudian one.
But that's really the bottom line at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you're not at the job. You know, you're wherever, and it's how you appreciate that and what you put into that makes the difference in the long run. So
okay, so having arrived at this point, what do you guys think about at different age levels? What would be your ideal way that one should be educated or taught or learn or whatever word it is that you want to describe to that?
Or maybe you said it. I mean, most of what I learned to value, mostly I learned after I got out of college. You know, I learned some valuable things there.
I would agree with that statement.
But that's simply to say that somebody who, you know, is 40 or 50 years old, you know, they learned a lot in, you know, the ensuing 20 or 30 years, as opposed to just that 4 or 10-year period. I mean, you continue to grow, and hopefully you learn more than you did, you know, because you're building on that. So, I mean, even for me, college was somewhat of a recreational activity. Yeah.
Wait, for example,
even for you, are you saying that like you're righteous or something?
No, that I, for the amount of time and money spent at it, I probably theoretically could have learned a hell of a lot more than I did.
Yeah.
And I had, you know, my share of fun, as most of us did.
they should have put our texts on beer bottles. Might have been better. All right.
Right.
Cool. Bud is up. Well, what about little kids? I mean, let's just start through each of the age groups. What about, like, should kids be receiving any type of, I don't know if formal's the right word, but going through any kind of educational process, structured process when they're a toddler?
No, certainly. I mean, they are. They are interacting with their mother.
But structural.
It should be appropriate to their. What do you mean by structural?
Yeah,
structural, like it would be a concerted effort to try to teach them whatever it is that you're trying to teach them, other than. See, this is where I'm not sure. Should values be part of education or not, or do you consider values part of education or not?
Yeah, but not that early.
We're teaching values already to our kid,
right
and he's
wrong,
2.
sort of
Well, you
about-
know,
He's still in the womb, but I mean, hey.
Yeah, I kind of break it down. Let me just put this in. I don't know how this fits in, Crawford, but I'll lay this groundwork out, and then we'll go from there. When you're talking
Okay.
about infants, really, they have
infants is
they have no
different.
idea about
Right.
the world around them.
And then there's
you talk
toddlers.
about toddlers up to the age of about 4. They're in
Right.
self-gratification.
And
That's all-
lashing out and all
right,
sorts of
that's all
things.
they know. And then you take, from there 5 to about, pre-teen, 10,
11,
11.
12, yeah.
They're into interacting with others. They start developing relationships and
Mm-hmm.
playing. And then you have your teenage years,
Those
which you're trying to
horrible
teach them.
sexualized years.
Pre-adult years, you're trying to teach them how to be responsible. And then as preparing them for all this is a preparation for life. So when they become 18 years old, they are now out on their own and they are now adults. And all through this, you're trying to bring them to that conclusion right there, that when they're out on their own,
Well,
they conduct themselves as responsible.
That's kind
and
of the
how
American
I look
way.
at. That's how I look at the.
You become the brick. You become the brick.
The brick.
In the
That's right.
wall.
That's right.
But so I look
Floyd.
at it, and I'm just laying a foundation. I look at those, and that kind of like now, going back to your question, how do you educate
Okay, well, let's.
people on those categories?
Well,
Would you not agree that that's
Yeah, those
that's
are
what's
roughly.
happening in those periods?
Yeah.
But I guess what I would go is that in the U.S. model, that's kind of it. Well, actually, and then there's the college, summer vacation for 4 years, and then you're off into the world, or you can delay your maturation process and go to grad school endlessly. But I guess is that? To me, there's some artifice in that construct. I agree up until the point when you hit your sexualized years, in the puberty teenage thing, and that. That's more like 16, 18 is actually kind of on the late end. You're kind of a late bloomer there. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I think you can be...
I'm still waiting to bloom.
Me too.
I think at that point you hit this stage, and certainly I had like this stage from, probably from about college through, I don't know when, like maybe my early 30s of, it was very much me driven. It was... And then it was like, and then after that, it was like, okay. After about like early 30s, I felt like, okay, I'm actually mature enough. Thank God it was coincidental that I actually, that a kid came along. It's like, okay, I can now think of like it isn't just me. And there's the focus there. So there's that epoch, and then I'm sure there's a grandparent epoch in there somewhere, and the middle age crisis thing. God knows when and how that'll fall on me if it hasn't already. So those are roughly, and you can be learning all the way through there. There's learning all the way through all of that. You're right. Through the infant stage, basically you're just kind of like, what the hell am I looking at?
I think I have something that kind of captures, or at least deals with both your topics. I think what you're saying too is that, what you have said is that there's these stages of development, and they apply to a certain age and portion of the children's life. Mm-hmm. And the same thing too, your question early on was like, when do you believe we should do this?
Right.
And
so let's start. He was establishing the categories.
That's right. All I was trying to do is establish the categories of what we're teaching. I'm trying to teach my children this at this period, this at this period, and this at this period.
So
how do we do now? Back to you. How do we do that? What is the
starting with the toddler category?
Infant,
I don't have a lot.
School down in Philadelphia, doesn't matter where, but it's another model of school or of education where for half the day you have classes. And these classes just aren't for fifth graders or this. They're involved with like someone older than you and someone younger than you. And you have that for part of the day, and then the rest of the part of the day you have like a little small community where you have people that are involved in selling and doing this, and they each share a role in that position where today I might be a marketer, today I might be this and that. But they learn not only how to act, if you can, learn at that young, and that's the question. Can I learn at 7 years old how to sell oranges to my friend? How do I interact if he's trying to get those oranges for me for a cheaper amount? But same thing in like early.
Beat him up.
That's right. Early, I'll take that with your milk money. Thank you. Earlier in the day, you're learning where because I think that you have to pick out these areas of their life. You have to. How are you going to start somewhere? So you have to say at this age they're doing that. At this age they're doing that. But you can say that this person here obviously is not the same as this person here. They're either ahead or below. And so by kind of smearing those boundaries and then in those age groups, you kind of educate them all together. And you have older children teaching younger children, vice versa. They're also being taught by a teacher. and then later on in the day they're kind of going out there and they're learning like how to be mini productive people.
Mini-me's.
Mini-me's.
Set up a kibbutz. Kibbutz.
I don't know. You pick one, Mike.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Kibitz.
Yeah, that's the Jewish...
Yeah. Okay, well, let's start with a toddler. I mean, in that stage, what do you think people ought to be doing with kids? Should we send them to daycare?
Sign language.
Sign language? Like, I know definitely...
Yeah, you know where I stand on it, so...
Well, for me, for toddlers, it's definitely values is one. Like, don't hit mommy.
Right.
And you know, basics like that. Don't throw your food or you're out of your crib and all that kind of stuff, where you go do timeout, whatever.
Like a 3-month-old.
Well, not 3 months.
Can't believe it.
No, toddler, I'm talking.
Okay.
It's real
2
basic
years.
stuff.
Like 2 years old.
Right.
But even now, I mean, Lynn's taken the time to, and it seems like, especially the style that she's using, seems great. I mean, she's teaching about real basic numbers, 1 through 10, and not to say he's got them all down pat. It's 1, 2, 3, 9, but and the letters. I mean,
who's to say what's right or wrong?
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's my job later. Is that and then she's going over the letters and that kind of thing. You know, just to start to get things flowing. And he's into it. He likes doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that is the greatest gauge. Is if the kid is interested, you go with it, and help foster their interest in things. Don't bash it into them, because then they get bored and rebel against it.
I think we should be drilled for an hour at a time,
well,
and then move on to another,
See, Mike,
aspect,
there's your conservative
and
background.
drill them for another hour, just like they do in the real system.
Well, right. So by example, you're proving my point. I mean, I think that's certainly appropriate for the toddler level. I'm assuming that's going to last, like you said, to the age of, pick a number, 4 or 5, whatever.
Right.
And each kid's a little different, and that's fine. You just go with what's right for the kid. Now, since I haven't got to this level yet with our kid, and it's hard to fathom all the way back to when I was that age, what about that next level? I don't know what we call it. I mean, what's after toddler? What do you?
Your adolescent years. Your 5, 6 to 11.
Yeah, 5 through 11.
I'd call them adolescent.
Whatever you want to call that.
That's adolescence?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Pre-adolescence.
That's pre-adolescence.
Pre-adolescence.
And there's some other psycho term for it,
Whatever.
but let's go with pre-adolescence.
Yeah.
What about during that period of time? What do you think is like an ideal setting for teaching,
let's just say,
for learning?
for toddlers, we're imparting them with the knowledge of morals.
Certainly that's absolutely part. That is, to me, the cornerstone.
Okay.
Well, you're teaching them
how to be good.
And I think, to add, I know where you're coming from with this, and this should be done by the parents. What you're trying to teach the kid is that there's more than a world where they're only conscious of this. This is it. Once it gets outside of arm's length, they are not conscious of anything else, and they're into self-gratification. And what you're basically, if I understand you right, is we need to teach them the difference between right and wrong at that end. Some boundaries, what they can do, what they can't do.
Because it's not innate.
Some morals, because that's the real learning period.
So then from there
And
we
that
go
should be done at home.
to pre-adolescence, which is now what?
5 to 11, we'll say. That's the time period, roughly.
And this is from the end of the hand.
Now they're starting to deal with other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're coming into focus. Mike's coming into focus. Oh, there's other people around.
What's that?
How do I respect people's property, respect people's privacy, respect people?
How do I even understand that?
Right. Those are the concepts we're trying to impart at that point.
And that would be on the behavioral end. And then the question is, everything can be reduced to behavior or what do you want to call the other stuff? The ABCs, the mathematics, and all that. Whatever you want to call that.
That's where I think the problem solving and thinking
non-moral
starts coming in. I mean, you can't teach what you just described in any school.
No.
Well, but I think education is more than problem solving. Problem solving is very much, I think, a very narrow view of what learning is about. Because I think, and I know you think this too, Mike, based on other comments you made, is that the human brain is different because of the creativity. Problem solving, computers can do.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Like, what's Shakespeare? Offers a wealth of information to us.
Right.
Deals nothing with problem solving, really. Darkly, it's capturing something about us humans, and so it is. I mean, what is it? Is it creativity, or is it maybe problem solving brought him to that point where he could do something like that? But who knows?
Right.
Well, it's certainly art
But you
and
have
there's
to be
other
able
elements.
to think critically to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
You
it
know,
might have been a
if there's-
component for him.
Well, I'll take that a
problem
little
solving
different.
in the sense of.
Let me just turn that a little way. Maybe what you're saying is, in problem solving, is now that the kid's past the self stage and is dealing with others, you need to learn how to deal and solve with issues you may have with somebody else.
How to understand your
Right.
world around you.
Yeah.
Right. Now, where's the best place for that? Is it public education?
Well, jeez, I mean, you know,
Well,
my
that goes
real
without saying
response.
is that public education is not
Not the
place
avenue.
for anything.
Yeah.
But any kind of institutional education, let's maybe even just go that far.
Yeah.
Um,
But again, you're right, Mike. I don't know if you can
I
teach
think,
that
I think
at
there's a
school.
role for a teacher
Mhm.
who is not a parent. You know,
Mhm.
somebody who has maybe somewhat specialized
The mentor.
knowledge. Yeah.
But when does that
Socrates,
role, understood, but that role, I mean, Socrates is a perfect example. He isn't teaching to pre-adolescents.
Right.
He's teaching to at earliest adolescence and probably late adolescence, because that's about when you're ready for those kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
But with the pre-adolescents, I mean, as you pointed out, Mike, the kids that were nailing it on the spelling bees, and that's just one of many examples where kids who are homeschooled are nailing it in terms of, any kind of statistically.
Plus, they have good social skills too, contrary to what some people would like to think.
Yeah.
Well, just because they're learning at school doesn't mean that, or at home, they're staying at home
Yeah,
the
well,
whole day.
a lot of the criticism in the public sector is that, well, at home they're not getting the same social interaction which they're getting.
What do you mean? The social interaction where someone's taking their
beating
milk
the
money?
snot out of you.
Right.
Matt the Maniac
Where-
is stealing
where
their
they-
milk money.
That's where the hat
They
came
get
in.
checked for weapons on the way into the building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but I did see that. I was in school, and I went to, when I was in school, there was one of my friends who was in private school all his life, or homeschool. And when he came out there, we played soccer on the same team, and all of a sudden people would start picking on him or just joshing with him. And before you know it, he freaked out, couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle people, giving him that type
that
of heat.
heart riding them.
And it made me think, if he wasn't homeschooled, if he was in public school and kind of slowly had been weaned on being picked on, would he be a more
See, I don't
tolerant
think
man?
homeschool means you have to stay at home the whole time. I mean, you
Yeah.
can still go to Little League, you can still go join
Right.
some.
Yeah.
In fact,
Right.
I think that's a perfect way.
Then you
because
become the enigma, and you're still in that.
But then you get
cast of
picked on
freaks.
and you learn those things.
I
you
don't
talk
think
about.
you are. I think depending on the environment, you don't have to be a cast of freaks. I mean, I think actually the most well-balanced people could be people that actually recognize that, wow, my parents care about me. They think this education thing is important because they demonstrate it to me every day. I mean, I am becoming, and I didn't used to be on this issue, but when you have a kid, you start thinking about it a lot more. It's like, okay, would I rather send my kid to some knucklehead government bureaucrat to teach my kid about all these wonderful government-sponsored programs, or is he better served being at home where, one, he'll be loved, so there's a big plus right there. Two is that who's going to know the kid better, and three is that he's going to definitely not be raised thinking that whatever is presented to him, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know I'm not going to teach a kid that way. So
Here's an ideal mix. Like I had a friend who, we'll just switch around a bit, but the model was this, that the friend went to public school and then in the summers went to camps and interacted with people on different things. Just kind of keep them fresh, not really idle. But same thing, if you do the private or the homeschooling, for that 9 months or whatever it is, and then for the 3 months, send them to like a local camp where they do get that interaction and they are they're focusing on specific topics that you can pick.
I think that,
In camps,
that could
soccer, baseball, football,
Yeah.
any of that interaction, I think they're going to learn that social skill, get picked on.
But I think they also need the social
But
skill.
I don't like that whole picked on kind of.
Well, I was just trying to answer Matt's
I
point.
think they need some other. I think they need an educational interaction with other students too, or other people.
Agreed.
Not serious, but like I wouldn't want it to be totally sports because I played sports all my life and I've seen people that the first baseman, he doesn't talk, leave him alone, and I wouldn't want that to be my kid. Like 3 months he sits there and he's just like he's pretty good, but
He doesn't talk. I mean, I guess I could agree. agree that with some of that, but I've seen some horrible summer camps too, where it is Lord of the Flies played out every single day, and they are just ruthlessly picking on some kid. And I wouldn't want my kid to be the one picked on, but equally as horrible, I would think, would be him being one of the kids picking on the kid.
That's on the pamphlet. You're supposed to check your kid. Do you want him picked on, or is he supposed to be the ringleader?
Or the cool kid. So I don't know. I mean, if there's a lot of control on it and ability for parental involvement at that age group, because I think the other thing we got to be in the background recognizing is that 8 kids mature. There's this natural, there has to be this, or I don't know if there has to be, but it seems kind of a natural human inclination that there's this separation because they got to become their own person. And then there's like that later on reconciliation after all those horrible teenage years and what horrible things teenagers do, including myself. And then hopefully you mature enough where you can then kind of rekindle those bonds later. I don't know if that's the way it has to be. That just seems to be the way it is a lot in the U.S. But during that pre-adolescent period, my thought is right now, as much contact as with the parents, especially on teaching of values, that's definitely number one. A continuation from the toddler years, actually. And then also, certainly I don't have a problem with them going to a specific teacher for a specific topic that the parent isn't able to teach. Or possibly even just going to a school even.
Or a philosopher down the corner.
Socrates.
Yeah.
It could be Socrates. It could be a neighbor that has a particular activity that they're pretty good at. I mean,
yeah,
for
we can
me,
all
actually,
think of some neighbor that we wouldn't mind sending our kids to, right?
What about this? What about the whole idea of, I know it's whatever it is, but taking a kid, and let's assume that the future is I'm going to have my kid, I don't even need to go to school anymore. Why waste those tax dollars? I have a room upstairs now where I got the monitor hooked up and my kid sits there all day, does everything, has his calisthenics there, and we have the computer baby education. You know, what do you think? Where do you think that would play itself out? What type of people do you think would be if that was the?
Well, we're actually
getting. They'd be any worse than what typically comes out of a lot of especially inner city public schools. I don't think that's particularly healthy.
Computer babies are close to boob tube babies, and we have a lot of those.
Right. Except there's more interactivity. There's less
on a computer, right?
But still,
they'll be more critical, but they could be more dangerous.
Yeah.
We could all give them numbers. Number 187. What do you think?
We'll go on to the next period, Crawford.
Okay. We'll migrate to the next period, which is the most difficult for us all.
Right.
Rich, you're going to hit those before I do.
So
tell me what it's like.
Better hurry up.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
So it's so quickly delving into the teenage years. I mean, there obviously needs to be more social interaction because they're maturing.
And what we're trying at that
despite
point,
your efforts,
you want to start trying to teach them about responsibility and the responsibility of being an adult, which they will soon be. So
right.
That's the lessons you're trying to teach there.
But it's so
on a big life lesson. But then the question is, I guess where the hell does the traditional concept of education fit in, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, and that sort of thing.
Well, I think that's an under base that's taught all along.
But who's doing it and where?
Well, again, I mean, the best place is homeschooling. I mean, obviously, and some kind of formal education that not the school systems we have now, but private schools or the philosopher down the corner.
What about changing the public system to match that? Do you think it's just something that's unattainable?
I think.
Well,
Michael,
public education is fundamentally based on force.
Yeah, he's very.
It's based on force, and so what you teach people and little citizens who go to these schools is that the way in which we get things done in our society is that we have people with guns who force people to do things their way, and we confiscate other people's money to pay for these things, and so they're teaching a certain ethic. In school right from the very beginning.
But they aren't teaching the critical thinking to actually be able to decipher the reality of the situation.
But see, the point is, now it's like, now I can't live in this world because it's totally sickening that I have to deal with this public world. And now I got to somehow get out and escape and find this utopian world. It's like,
But there are
you can
options now. You have to work a little harder at them. When we talk about homeschooling, there's private options. I mean,
and there's private schools.
Government makes everything more difficult because they confiscate half of everything we make. So you're kind of swimming uphill, but upstream. Makes my metaphors.
that's even harder when you're swimming uphill.
very, very hard.
All that dirt gets in the way.
It's in your teeth.
But there are options now. I mean, 90% go to public school, but 10%, choose some other option, and they're not rich people, by and large.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely options for private education that go beyond homeschool, and there can be a mix. I mean, it can be part homeschool, part not. I know people are doing part homeschool, part public, and part private, part home.
But fundamentally, you can't change the private system because, the public system, because it's the nature of what it is. It is force, and you can improve it here and there for a while, but it'll inevitably become what it is, which is indoctrinate their little minds to serve the state. I guess there I've said it.
Matt, what do you think about?
What's the address of this place? You gotta watch out for him.
It's on at the end of the show.
Mike's no longer at work today. So. What do I think about that? No. Yeah, it's truthfully given me a lot to think about. I mean, it's
tough. It's tough. I mean, especially the homeschool part is like, geez, is that the way to go or not?
Right.
And that is a tough one. That's one I'm starting prematurely, perhaps, to wrestle with. But ultimately, I mean, the results are, at least on the surface level, are demonstrating a lot of these kids can do it academically. Socially, I think it's a mixed bag, but it's a mixed bag of people in any kind of school. I mean, look at you, for instance.
I never went to school.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, on that note, are we ready to go back to work?
I'm ready for the damn mad monkey brain myself after this talk.
Bring in the mad monkey brain.
Executive